Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. The Madison County, Illinois State's Attorney is the Chief Prosecutor for Madison County. He represents the state of Illinois in court and prosecutes or defends lawsuits, applications, or motions, whether civil or criminal, on behalf of the state. The normal term of office is 4 years. The office holder is usually a Democrat or a Republican. This year, 2016, Ron Williams is the Republican candidate. Mr. Williams is a graduate of West Point and served in the Army for 32 years, with 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a paratrooper, Army Ranger, and Aviator. He earned a master's degree in civil engineering from Oklahoma State University, becoming a registered professional civil engineer. He managed the modernization of the CH-47 Chinook helicopter fleet, producing 485 aircraft. He's also an experimental test pilot. After retiring from the Army, Mr. Williams attended law school at Northern Illinois University, later becoming a public defender in Madison County. As a public defender, he disposed of over 2,600 felony cases with sufficient trial experience to meet the requirements of the Illinois death penalty bar. He also defended over 7,500 juvenile delinquency cases. He's here today seeking your vote in November. Ron Williams, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you.
So, I just want to cover this Chinook helicopter business before we get into what we're really here to talk to you about. If that was Vietnam, was that during the Vietnam period, or when were these Chinook helicopters built?
The Chinook helicopters were first produced in the late 1950s. Early models were used in Vietnam extensively as combat support aircraft. When I got involved with it, they were very much advanced over what was used in Vietnam, and the aircraft that were produced during my watch as a program manager were coming out, I guess, in about 1986, 87, and their first combat experience was in the first Gulf War. They've been used extensively in Afghanistan and Iraq since.
I was going to say that these helicopters are still in use today, and it's just incredible. Well, actually, I did a report not long ago about how the Air Force and the Navy both are having literally to scrounge for parts in order to keep helicopters and airplanes actually flying, even to the point of they went to some museum somewhere to get a door latch off of a museum piece aircraft in order to put on an active duty aircraft and make it go.
My understanding is that that's true throughout the Navy, Air Force, and Army. And it's also true that there are still Chinook helicopters flying that are older than the pilots who are flying them.
Just like the B-52s.
Just like the B-52s.
Which were first produced in the early or mid-1950s, as I recall?
Mid to late 1950s,
Mid
yes.
to late.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'd love to talk airplane stuff to you, but we're not here today to talk about that. You've decided to put yourself out there on the line and run for a political office. What makes you want to be abused?
Well, there are many reasons. Some of the lesser important are that I just happen to think that Madison County would be a better place with a little bit of political diversity in the government. But a more important reason, I think, is that communities in this country, and I think perhaps around the world, must either develop and thrive and grow, or they fall behind. We know that the people who move businesses around and people who develop properties look at 2 principal things when they're looking at where to go. One is the quality of education, and 2 is the crime rates. Unfortunately, Madison County has a rather high crime rate. Compared to the surrounding counties, even including St. Clair County with East St. Louis, Madison County has about a 20% higher crime rate than the surrounding counties. Mm-hmm. A recent report using FBI statistics show that 2 of our communities in Madison County are among the 25 most dangerous in all of Illinois. and that includes the communities in Cook County.
Can you name those two, or would you care to name those two, or would you rather pass on that?
It's very public information. It's FBI statistics. It's Alton and Granite City, and those communities need help, and I would like to be one of the people that help them.
Okay. Now we we have a state's attorney in Madison County right now. Excuse me. What is it that the state's attorney could be doing that he's not doing that you would be doing?
Well, these are simple factual matters. The state's attorney in 2015 charged 3,035 felonies. 5 of them went to trial. That means that the very, very great majority, 98, perhaps even 99%, were settled on terms that the defendant, the criminal now, thought were appropriate, thought were attractive. When you're plea bargaining cases on terms that are sufficient, that 98% or 99% of the defendants choose to take the plea bargain, you're not deterring crime. The state's attorney's job is not to have a high conviction rate. That's the wrong metric to use. The state's attorney should be deterring crime. You do not deter crime when most of your dispositions involve a plea that runs something like plead to a lesser charge, absolute minimum sentence to the lesser charge, get out of jail today and go home. That does not deter crime. Nothing good happens in the county jail. They don't get any training, they don't get counseling, they don't get education, they don't get sunlight and exercise, and they don't really get a lot in the way of food. That's the way jails are in our country. There's nothing wrong with that, that's just the way they are. The rehabilitation.
Now, jails, just so that we educate people here, jails, when you talk about that, are not prisons. These are temporary holding facilities while people are being held before they go to trial and either are acquitted or convicted of a crime. Is that essentially correct?
That's essentially correct. Some people convicted of minor crimes, misdemeanors, will serve time in jail. I think we have to be more worried, though, about the felonies. It's the felonies where Madison County is being hurt. You know, in every one of these crimes, there's a victim. And these people need to be helped, they need to be protected. The state, every state, but Illinois in particular, sets up a correction system, a prison system. By definition, a felony is a crime that, if found guilty, should result in a prison sentence. That's important because in prison, people get training, they get education, they get counseling, rehabilitation. Mm-hmm. And I just think that releasing people immediately on pleading guilty rather than sending them to get this help, they perhaps don't see it as help, but it is. And that deters crime.
I believe that Madison County is in the 3rd Judicial Circuit. Is that?
Yes.
That's right. Does the 3rd Judicial Circuit have the capability of expanding to start actually holding trials for a large number of felony cases?
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. And we have a collection of very able judges. They're very able to conduct these trials. We have a jury system that brings in an awful lot of people every docket week. I won't pretend that there wouldn't be some dislocations if you started having more trials, but I've thought a lot about how you would do this, and you know, even criminals deserve to see some consistency in the exercise of criminal justice, and so I don't think that it would be appropriate to come into the administration building some morning in early December and pretend like there's a new sheriff in town and now we're going to crack down on crime, new broom sweeps clean kind of thing. I think these changes have to be made gradually, and the culture needs to change. Mm-hmm. I know perhaps still 60 or 65% of all of the prosecutors in Madison County. I have great respect for them. They're very able people. They're accomplished trial lawyers, and they will have no trouble bringing the system in line with what the legislature and the governor at the time intended when this law was signed.
Let's expand on what I said during the introduction. You're very familiar with the courts of Madison County because you worked in the defender's office, right?
Yes, I did.
Why don't you explain, first of all, what the public defender's office is, what you do, and how that makes you familiar with the criminal system in Madison County where you're wanting to be the chief prosecutor.
In a nutshell, what a public defender does is he defends, he zealously advocates for his client when that client is accused of a crime. Public defenders only defend people who cannot afford to hire their own lawyers. We defend indigent clients, is what we say. Now, it just happens that perhaps 92 or 93% in any given year of all of the defendants are assigned to the public defender's office. That means the public defender's office handles in any given year perhaps 26 or 2,700 cases. And the way Madison County works, because we don't push people into trials, is that the public defender's office will almost always have between 1,100 and 1,200 cases open. That means every assistant public defender, which I was one of them, carries around every week 15 or 20 files, prepared to deal with them, prepared to go to trial with 6 or 7 hours notice, but almost never goes to trial.
Mm-hmm. And you handled cases from breaking and entering, or I don't know what the lowest level crimes are, up to murder, I gather.
Yes, I did. The public defender's office handles the most minor crimes, misdemeanors, up to the most serious crimes, murders. My very first case, I was not the first chair or the guy really in charge. I was assisting the first assistant public defender, and my very first trial was the murder of an infant. And it was tough. It took me quite a while to get used to it. But you know, human beings are almost infinitely adjustable, and I adjusted to it.
Mm-hmm. What made you, well, you've actually explained that, but you're talking about changing chairs. In other words, you're wanting to move from where you have been for a number of years defending to moving over to prosecuting the very people that you're currently defending and treating them, well, I don't know, more harshly, or at least making them go deeper into the system than they have been. Can you expand on that?
I would, with respect to becoming more harsh, I would say that my objective would be to exercise the state law as it was intended by the legislature, and not to pervert it by charging a very serious crime and then reducing it to a lesser serious crime, pleading a guy and letting him go home that day. So why did I change is an interesting question. You're a veteran, so you surely remember the time when an awful lot of courts-martial's trials were handled by line officers.
Yes.
In my case, a combat engineer or a pilot. I got my share of those. I enjoyed that work, and when it came time for me to get out of law school, I decided I wanted to do criminal law, and it just happened that it was easier to become a public defender at my age. And I did it for 12 years. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed helping people. But it gradually dawned on me that maybe I'm helping people too much.
You're on the wrong side.
I'm on the wrong side. And I guess I shouldn't say the wrong side, but I think
well, you say it better
than I do.
Yeah.
I will give you a short example, and although I think it's short, I may have to apologize because it's not. A young man in Granite City, sort of a ne'er-do-well kid, but not a terrible kid, constantly drunk, never in school, never held a job, beat a homeless man to death one night with his bare hands. In Illinois, this is first-degree murder. I get assigned to the case. I do what defense attorneys do best. I bargained and I bargained and I waited and I waited. And this was a case where any of our good judges in Madison County would have sentenced this kid to 35 years easily. Eventually, He got a 7-year sentence. Instead of having to serve every day of it as you would with first-degree murder, he only had to serve a little less than half of it. He was
3.5 years.
3.5 years. He got 6 months for good behavior, so he's down to like 29 or 30 months. By the time he was sent to the prison system, he only had to serve about 10 months there. He didn't really get all the help he needed, I guess, because he was soon back on the street. Shortly after he was back on the street, he committed the offense of sexual exploitation of a minor. I have trouble even saying those words. He should have been in prison, but no, he was back on the street after committing a horrendous murder, and now he commits sexual exploitation of a minor. The state's attorney's office did not prosecute that case because he was on parole, or as we now say, supervised release, and they just said, okay, now we'll let it go. Well, this young man is back on the street in Granite City now. He has not been convicted of the crime that he almost certainly committed, and he's not being supervised. He doesn't have to register. We've got to take criminal law more seriously than we are right now.
I'm going to just take just a slight little deviation here. You've gotten to know your clients. What is it that leads them to this criminal life as opposed to other kids of their, or young adults of their same age that don't wind up in the criminal system? What makes the difference here, in your opinion?
I would like to say that it's very, very complex, and I'm an engineer and a pilot and a lawyer, and I don't know that I have the answer exactly, but my experience tells me that part of it is an inheritance. It's sort of like it's the family business. My father or my mother was this way, and that's why I'm this way. Part of it is lack of education, and therefore an inability to get a good job. And part of it is just lack of what we would have called 50 years ago good upbringing.
We're spending something on the order, depending on the district, between $10,000 and $14,000 per student per year. So these, you know, there was money being spent on these usually young men. Do they not want to take advantage of that? I mean, you know, for that same 10 or 14,000, you could be sending, you know, people to really, really good schools over in St. Louis County. And I mean, I'm talking about private schools.
Well, I actually know more about the St. Louis schools than I do about the Edwardsville and other Madison County schools. Let me just say that in the St. Louis school system, as late as 12 years ago, they were spending already $16,000 per pupil, and they were getting solid Fs in the state report card, and many of their schools today are not certified. I believe that I'm not qualified to figure out why. In fact, I'm not sure anybody is, or good people would have figured that out by now.
Okay, well, I'll let it go at that. So we have the Madison County State's Attorney plea bargaining 95 plus, let's just say 95+% of the felony cases as opposed to taking them to trial. And you think that that example means that people have, even though they're getting some time, feel like they've gotten away with something, and so therefore are inclined to repeat this process? Is that what I heard you say? Or because they didn't get put in prison where they could have the training and the psychological work that you have referred to, that's why they continue on in the crime business?
I guess I would say it a little bit differently. I don't think any of them walk out of the jail saying I got away with something. I know that they might come close to saying that because they are often very appreciative of the work that the defense attorneys do. They know what they were looking at. They know that they got a lot less. I don't think they walk out saying I got away with something. But I don't think the criminal justice system has gotten their attention. A very important psychologist from the 1950s used to say that you cannot change an adult's behavior unless he experiences a significant emotional event. You know, as unpleasant as the jail is, 30 days in jail or 15 days in jail doesn't come up to the standard of a significant emotional event for a pretty tough kid from a pretty tough neighborhood who hasn't been brought up to respect the law. So I think it takes more. It takes more trained people. Let me say something about probation. About 40% of the cases that come through the Madison County State's Attorney's Office wind up with some form of probation. Probation is favored in Illinois law, and I very much favor using probation myself because it results in supervision by trained professionals. Madison County has a very excellent probation department, and the recidivism rate is not terrible for people on probation. May not be what you want it to be, but it's not terrible.
You probably know the state's attorney, the fellow who you'll be running against.
I know him well, yes.
And you probably knew the man who was before him, who's now a judge.
I know him well.
Yes. Why didn't they, in your opinion, see this the way that you do?
Culture is a word that means many things to many people, but I'm going to use it in this context. This is the Madison County culture. It's been this way for many, many years. It's been many state's attorneys back. Frankly, because of my experience in the court-martial system, I was absolutely shocked at how successful I was my first year as a public defender. I thought it was all about me, but it wasn't. It's just the way that Madison County has developed. I have good friends that went to law school with me at Northern who work at public defender's office and in state's attorney's office in the collar counties around Chicago. It's not like that up there. They will each try 3 or 4 felony cases every month. And of course, when you have a trial, then that absolutely does away with the ability to reduce the sentence or to reduce the offense. The judge is obliged to hand down a legal sentence, which means at least the minimum for the offense that was charged. My belief is that you should charge the offense that the police officers have brought and can prove. If you feel like you can't charge that offense, charge the offense that you can prove. I do not believe that anybody in Madison County is charging burglary when it's actually theft in order to coerce somebody into pleading guilty.
So they're not overcharging?
I don't think they're overcharging. That would be horribly unethical, and these are not unethical people. These are good people. They work hard at a difficult job. I do think, though, that if you're going to charge the burglary, you should prosecute the burglary. You shouldn't use it as a tool to plea bargain to make the court system run faster. Mm-hmm. Not more efficiently, just run faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well now I'm just sitting here as a citizen, and I'm saying, like, it sounds like you're qualified to do this job. It sounds like you have the background to do this job. So when you are in the political arena, when you're actually struggling to get elected, I don't know that it's going to be about the merits of the job and who can do it. It seems to me that this is going to wind up as something political.
Well, I have absolutely zero experience in the political area, but I do watch current events, and I believe that as much as anything else, Republican success in Madison County this year might hinge on success at the national level. We know that in the primary, an awful lot of voters came out and voted Republican. We know there was a very much diminished vote among Democrats. So I think, A, I have to work very hard to get people to know me. B, we have to have some success, some help. This whole business about coattails is real, or we wouldn't talk about it generation after generation. Mm-hmm. It's my job to convince people. I've got to work hard at it.
Well, the normal way of convincing people in this day and age seems to be television, radio, and yard signs. Are you going to have sufficient monies for radio, television, and yard signs?
Yes.
So you expect you're going to be able to put up a realistic political fight, unlike some other people who have run for county office and simply have been outgunned because they simply didn't have the money to be able to compete.
I think realistic is a good way to describe it. I will certainly not have the resources that Mr. Gibbons will have. The big law firms in Madison County must stay true to their political beliefs. They can't change. Even if they liked me, they couldn't change. But I think I'll have the resources required to make people know me and understand me. Mm-hmm. I may not be able to overwhelm a Democratic operation in Madison County, but I think all I have to do is get people to understand the situation and understand me.
We got about 2-3 minutes left, probably closer to 2 minutes. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about?
Yes, and without seeming mean-spirited about it, I've watched a great number of your shows. I believe I told you that my wife is a trustee for the village of Glen Carbon. A lot of the information that's valuable to her in working for Glen Carbon has come from your shows, especially on subjects like the TIF. You did an interview with Mr. Gibbons in 2012 talking about the tragedy of drug overdoses, specifically heroin. He sat here and told you, in my office, we don't plea bargain those cases. They go to prison. I got up out of my chair, and it took me exactly 3 minutes to find 5 cases in the following year where intent to deliver got probation. They amounted to 50% of the cases of intent to deliver in that 12-month period.
So he doesn't telling me the truth?
I don't think that he lies to you. I think he's lackadaisical about the performance of his job.
I see. Well, that's unfortunate. You know, I bring people here for the purpose of letting the folks out there see them, know them, and be able to understand what it is that's important to them. I'm not the regulator of, I mean, I'll leave that to Elliot Davis and others to decide, you know, who the liars are and go after them. This is not crossfire here. This is, we try to be civilized here. If that's the case and he was telling me something that wasn't entirely true, I'm truly sorry that that didn't get corrected at the time. But I would hope that that this is going to be a fair and square election, and that the people will actually make a decision not based upon politics, but based upon what they want the prosecution system in this county to be like.
I think that would be fair to both of us.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I've been speaking with Ron Williams. He is a Republican candidate for Madison County, Illinois State's Attorney, which means he's wanting to be the top prosecutor in the county. We're going to be uploading this to YouTube. Go to Conversation with Lee Presser, Ron Williams, and then you'll be able to look at it, whatever you missed, and show it to your friends. Thank you.